All right, let's talk tropics. Week of July 21st. Get ready to round out the month of July. Hard to believe, or maybe it's easy to believe. Depends on how your summer has gone to this point. From a tropical standpoint, 3 named storms. All of them were tropical storms at the strongest. And it's been fairly quiet to this point. So what is to be expected here over the coming days? This is a full view look from the Gulf, Caribbean, all across the Atlantic Basin. Really nothing that jumps out at you. You might see that cluster of yellow, red over near the African coastline. It's pretty typical. We see lots of tropical waves coming off of that part of the country this time of year. Sometimes those end up turning to tropical waves that we have to watch. In this particular instance, out there it's just a mass of convection over the far, far east Atlantic. The NHC has put a 10% chance of development on this thing. Very disorganized cluster of showers, thunderstorms that is a good bit to the east of the Lesser Antilles, Windward Islands, Leeward Islands, this island chain right here. You've probably been to maybe on a cruise before, but right now the odds of development very, very low. Put this into NHC perspective for you, so there's a look. And we'll give this a bit of a range here. Might as well do a little bit of measuring, see how far out this is from any sort of land here. So again, this is 400 miles away from those islands, that island chain out there. And again, this will likely not amount into anything, but that's just kind of an overview. This has gotten a label of Invest 94. And here's where the spaghetti plots take it. In fact, the latest spaghetti plots actually have this fizzling. Earlier in the week, earlier Monday, they at least had a plot that went all the way into the Southern Caribbean, so the odds of this turning into anything are pretty much nil. Let's look at tropical depression wind probability. And again, that little wave that's coming off the African coast. Could that amount to anything over the next week or so? Sure. The probability is very low, but nevertheless, we watch this time of year. Speaking of, this time last year, we just got past Beryl, which set several records. Just thought we would relive or go back through a July storm. Now, granted, this formed in June, but most of its lifespan, or a good chunk of it, was in July. So you go back to June 26th, and this was Beryl. It was a weak disorganized low. That's how everything starts. Pretty quick ramp up with this. By June 30th, it was a Category 1 storm. Sea level pressure, 989 millibars. And just a couple days later, boy, it exploded here. We reached major hurricane status on June 30th. And July 2nd, 2 different readings here. 195 mile an hour winds on early July 2nd. By late July 2nd, 201 mile an hour wind gusts. That is pretty significant. Wind speed sustained of 167. Now, this is over open waters at this point, but nevertheless, powerful storm. Set all sorts of records for the earliest, Cat 5, the strongest, winds, all that stuff. But goes to show that you can have it happen any time of year. It approached Jamaica late on the 2nd. Again, this was moving pretty quickly. And wind gusts, again, were approaching 170 miles an hour. By the time it reached the Yucatan, a little bit of a less favorable as far as atmospheric conditions. July 5th, it weakened as it moved over the Yucatan. A lot of rain with this, but July 6th, it moves back over into Bay of Campeche and then ultimately the Gulf. And made landfall on the 8th of July, 2024, a little bit to the south and west of the Houston area. Again, big rainmaker, big tornado maker too for certain parts of the southeast, specifically Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. Had a lot of rain with this, 3 to 6 inches before it fizzled on July 11th. So again, July can have its notable systems. So look at named tropical systems going back to 1944, so 1944 to 2020. So we say named tropical systems. We're talking about anything that got a name. It could be a hurricane, it could be a tropical storm, it could be a tropical depression. In this particular sense, we're talking about any of those. And this is in July, and this looks at the regions that are most likely to see that. You see parts of the Caribbean, you see the far, far western Atlantic, and then you see a hot spot up there off of the Carolina coastline near Cape Hatteras, and basically right where the Gulf Stream is. You'll get these little cutoff lows that sometimes form. So that's an area to watch. As for hurricanes, this is storms that got a name but then formed to hurricane level. And again, it's possible in the Western Gulf. also in parts of the Caribbean, and there again off the Gulf Stream there on the eastern seaboard of the U.S. But you'll notice not a huge likelihood in July of formation. Then we jump to August. We're almost there. Same time frame, 1944 to 2020. And the bullseye is now right out there in the central Atlantic, very close to the border of the Caribbean. You have the Windward and Leeward Islands there. And that island chain is no stranger to these strong hurricanes. Seen several over the last couple of years, going back to really 2017, 2018. You had Maria, you had Michael, you had several that went through this part of the Atlantic Basin. And we start to watch that area for higher development risk. Of course, you've got over near Bermuda and up towards the Atlantic seaboard is much more likely there. And then the Gulf, as always, a likely possibility for named tropical systems, even hurricanes. That number begins to creep up. So the point is, we're getting closer to that time of year where the hurricanes will become more pertinent. For now, things are relatively quiet, not a whole lot happening. That's always good. You got any beach plans, any cruise plans? I don't see any issues over the next 7 to 10 days. As always, we will watch it very closely. So here's a look at all that compiled data, and we look at this to get basically a gauge of when our season peaks. And we are a good ways off. You see July 10th, we are still at the very inception, the early on point in the hurricane season, tropical season. By August 1st, we start to see a jump. And if you're hiking a mountain, between August 1st and August 20th, that's a pretty steep increase. It's going to have you winded walking up that hill. And we typically see a pretty big increase in development over that period. A couple reasons. We're now at the point of the year where our sea surface temperatures typically hit more of a maximum. We start to see more of those tropical waves coming off the African coast. And a lot of times with our overall setup, Bermuda High and other features, it's all just lining up to particularly be a better favorable development period. And so we'll watch that all the way up to its peak, September 10th, 11th, thereabouts, before it starts to wind down. So we got a long ways to go, but that's kind of a preview of what we're looking at here for our tropical season. And again, there's certainly every year has its own unique variabilities and its changes, but we are still fairly early on and with no immediate threat. Just thought we'd touch base, talk a little bit about where we watch in the months ahead, and hopefully it's a quiet season. I'm sure that would be ideal for anybody taking a trip out in the Atlantic Caribbean, but also for coastal folks who've had to deal with hurricanes over the last couple of years. It'd be nice to have a quiet season. That's your tropical update. Hope you all have a great week.